Hi, hope you're doing well today. This is Dan here, and I'm going to show you the Dorian mode. That's just what I was playing there, and it's used loads in funk and jazz music. And what I'm going to do in this lesson, this is how it's going to go down. I'm going to teach you how to construct it and what it actually is, what is a mode. And then I'm going to teach you, more importantly, how you can use it and some ideas to memorize and apply it in your own playing. So all a mode is a scale within a scale. And the Dorian mode comes from the major scale. It's actually the second mode of a major scale. So this is what that means. If I play a C major scale starting on the 3rd fret and I go across the string, I get C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And more importantly than the names of the notes in this case is the order of whole tones and half tones between the notes. If I now start that exact same pattern, except now I'll start on the second note, the D. I get the same note, but I get a different order of those half tones and whole tones. And that changes the entire picture. So a D Dorian is the second mode of C major, just D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. I'm going to play at the 10th fret here. By the way, all of this stuff is on a PDF, free PDF that you can download, so I'll put a link to that. And when we take the notes going from C major, but from the second note, so D, E, F, G, A, B, C, we get a very interesting collection of notes that, as I said before, sounds really good in funk and in jazz. We have a root note, obviously, and then we've got a major second. We've got a minor third, then a fourth and a fifth, perfect fourth and fifth. That note there, that 6th note, is a really interesting sound against the root note and the minor third. After that major 6th, we've got a minor 7th, and then finally an octave. And even just improvising using those notes, you can hear it has that mood, it has that flavor to it. I'm actually going to do a lesson on Friday on 6 Dorian riffs. So make sure you subscribe to the channel to get that lesson, because I think it's a really important thing to do to condition your ear to the sounds of this. I mean, just one of them straight off the bat, actually. Good Times is just the Dorian mode going up the scale. So that really conditions your ear to the sound of this mode. So let's memorize this pattern here that starts on the 10th fret of the E string, the D there. What we can do is we can continue across the neck, 3 notes per string. And if you know a 3 note per string major scale pattern starting on C, that's all you're playing. Just ignoring that C, you'll be starting on the second note, the D, and that is your mode. But provided you do know your C major scale or any major scale really well, just ignore the first note when you are playing a Dorian mode, okay? So next thing to do is to learn the arpeggio, which is just the notes stacked in thirds. So start on the first note, miss out the next, play the next note like this, miss out the next. So just go in thirds every time. You get a root, a minor third, perfect fifth. That's a triad. Minor 7th, major 9th, that's an 11th. We're going to get a 13th as well if we miss out the next note. That sounds quite jazzy, doesn't it? If you play them like that, you just stack these notes in thirds each time. You're actually playing every single note of the scale, but instead of going like that, you're doing it more in a stacked vertical type way. So that's a good way to practice it in this way. Make sure as you go, you know that you're on a root, you're on a flat third, and you're on the minor 7th and so on. Lots of bass lines are constructed using these so-called chord tones. And if you now add in that major 6th, that is the note that gives it this Dorian quality, this Dorian flavor. So what you could do is you could just improvise using, I'm just using a root here. which is the D. Then the F, which is the flat third. And there's the minor seventh. It's on the same fret as the root, but on the D string. And right next to that, and I know this really well, I know that right next to the flat seventh, that way by 1 fret, down a half step, is that major sixth. So just improvise using those few notes. There, I just did a little run down the scale. So I was preempting myself there because I was just showing you how to use this anyway. I couldn't resist it. But one place you often hear the Dorian mode is in a 2-5 progression or 2-5-1 progression in jazz. I play the chords of that. The 2 would be a D minor 7. 5 in this case would be a G7. The 1 would be a C major 7. So let's ignore that one actually. Let's just do a 2-5. All I'm doing there is just going up the Dorian mode and aiming to hit the G, which is the 5 chord, and just doing a walking bass line. Now descending the scale. That's a chromatic note there. So that's walking bass. You hear the Dorian mode a lot in there. Another thing you can do, and I'm just sticking notice to D Dorian here, but you could change the key, you could do anything you like here. Let's move down to the 5th fret of the A string. Creating funk riffs, as I was doing before, is a really easy thing with Dorian mode. When you hear bass players improvising on YouTube or in shops and stuff, very often people will just whip out the Dorian mode. All I was doing there, I'm going C, D, 3rd fret to 5th fret in the A string. That's that flat 7th to the root. And that's the same thing up the octave. Just 2 notes, C and a D. Really simple. And by putting the B in there, 4th fret of the G string, that injects that major 6th, that Dorian quality. By the way, if you flatten that note and keep all the other notes in the Dorian mode the same, you get D natural minor, which has a different quality to it, doesn't it? That's natural minor. And just putting that B in there, that major 6th, it lifts it, sounds a little bit brighter. And so that was what I was doing. I was just playing a C and a D and just putting in that B, the major 6th. I know where the major 6th is above the root. It's actually, if I'm on the 5th fret of the A string, the D, I know that a major 6th is down 1 fret and down 2 strings, down towards the floor 2 strings. And I also know that that note down the octave is there, which is 3 frets below the D. This is how I think a lot of the time. I think about patterns and the relationship of notes to the root note. It sounds very funky there, doesn't it? So What, Paul Chambers' great bass line from Miles Davis' tune. That is a classic example of a Dorian jazz sort of use, All I'm doing there is just playing a Dorian mode, using a bit more of that vertical approach, thirds and chromaticism and ideas like that. That starts to sound a bit more jazzy. So use those ideas as well. So apart from how to use it in that way, just to create your own riffs and your own sort of solos and ideas like that, there are some ideas that you can use to actually practice this. First of all, just do it up 1 string And really pay attention to the patterns of whole steps. Yeah, it's like from fret 5 to 7 where you've got a gap of a fret in the middle. That's a whole step, and a half step is where, adjacent frets. So we start off whole, half. And then a series of 3 whole steps. Okay. I know really, really well that if I start on a D, I go D, E, F. I've got a whole tone followed by a half tone. I also know that if I descend, go the other way, I've got like a mirror image of that. I've got a whole tone down and then a half tone down. These are things you pick up. The same pattern, just on different Ds. So if you learn a scale going up and down a string, you get to know these patterns. Another thing to do is to learn this scale starting on 3 different fingers. So we've already done the one that starts on the 2nd finger. Then plonk your little finger down on that 10th fret and learn the notes that way too. And then 1st finger. And these are sort of fragments of 3 note per string patterns. If you do it 1 octave, that is. This is like a bit of a step up, but then you would expand outside of the octave. I really like 3 note per string patterns there. They lend themselves really well to fast, legato 16th note playing. I really like doing that. So we've got the scale starting off the 2nd finger, the little finger, and the 1st finger. That kind of covers the bases wherever you are. Look, if I'm on I just happen to find myself on the D on the 12th fret here. I know that's where I'm starting. There's that little pattern I was telling you about where you've got whole tone, half tone. And if you know where the Ds are, I'm using D in this instance, but obviously do this in every key. If I know where the Ds are, I know that wherever I am, if I know across a string, I'm covered in every eventuality. And as you do this, you'll start to piece together your own patterns and you'll start to be able to use the entire fretboard. And that is the idea. Going back a step, make sure that when you're practicing the 1 octave, whichever pattern you decide to use, make sure you're very aware of the intervals and where they are. Minor 7th, same fret, 2 strings apart. Octave. There's that minor 3rd. The minor modes, of which this is one, work brilliantly with the minor pentatonic and blues scales. There's one thing I haven't told you about. Just the minor pentatonic scale sounds really open, really, really cool sound. If I add one note in, the flat 5, you get the blues scale. And all those notes are contained within the mode. So when you're improvising, which I advise you do, I was playing to a drum track here, and you can do the same. You can improvise using the Dorian mode and throw in some of the minor pentatonic and blues scales as well. I'll demonstrate. It's Dorian, blues scale, just pentatonic, minor pentatonic, and that was that arpeggio I taught you where you stack it in thirds. And that's the last thing to make sure you memorize. There are, of course, other ways of playing that same thing, and I advise you to explore those ideas yourself. I remember transcribing a Victor Wooten tune. I really don't remember what it was actually, but it did something like that. And when I analysed it, this was years ago, I realised, oh, that's just this Dorian mode stacked in thirds. You'll hear these kind of ideas a lot. A couple of tips when you are practicing soloing. Think about phrases. That's fragments of notes. So that's a phrase, you know. I'm using articulations, slides, hammer-ons, bends, things like that. That brings the scale to life. And just like we talk in sentences and we full stops and also, you know, slowing down, speeding up, use that in your solo ideas as well. I mean, not slowing down, but space. There's loads of space there. Little faster run there. So you can use some of these ideas, little dynamic changes. You can intersperse some sort of thirds ideas. Like that. With more horizontal, linear, solo, what am I trying to say? Playing through the mode, that's what I mean. That kind of idea. I'm not playing to the drum beat, but what I would recommend that you do, first without, just so that you can get the patterns and the shapes and the intervals, and then bring in some sort of timing sound source so that you can really play in time and get your groove together. You do want to learn this in any key, so let's just say I'm on B Dorian. Same pattern starting on B. If that is the second mode of the major scale, if you just go 2 frets in this direction down towards the head, you'll find the major key that we're in. So A major gives you B Dorian. So that's one trick to try and sort of, you know, you might know the major scale, that might help you to learn the notes of the Dorian. You know, you make it easier for yourself. If you already know the major scale, you sort of already do know the Dorian, and do learn these in different keys. But it's a brilliant mode, and as I said, I'm going to do this lesson on Friday with the 6 different riffs, and that brings things into context a little bit. You can actually hear a mode, so an abstract idea like a mode, you can actually hear it in the real world. So make sure that you subscribe, make sure you check out the next lesson on that. But if you do have any questions on this, I'm going to do a similar thing for the other modes, but the Dorian mode is certainly one of the most used modes that you'll hear, especially in funk, especially in jazz. So I think it's a very good idea for you to get that down. Modes aren't scary, they're actually amazing. You'll hear them a lot in music. So I hope you got something from that. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.